Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to my global audience. Walter Cotton back at you with another installment of my Patriot Report. In this report, we're going to hyper focus, or should I say, we're going to start a series that's going to be hyper focused on the challenges that are infecting our national security industrial base. I'm going to talk to you about the problems that are associated with the porousness of our national security industrial base, as well as the benefits that are available to people who wear my social uniform. All that and more on this installment of my Patriot Report. Thanks for sticking with me through that commercial break. We're talking about national security, our national security industrial base, and the threat that we are currently experiencing through that or to that national security industrial base. And that threat, from my humble opinion, is resulting from the fact that we've got a lawsuit underway, a attack against the Minority Business Development Agency that I fear, based on the update that I recently had an opportunity to read, is going to prevail. I'm unfortunately delivering the bad news that I looked at the government's response to the plaintiff's motion, and I'm actually going to share that information with you so that you can review it for yourself. And I was aghast to see what I consider to be a very juvenile response to this complex case. And unfortunately, I see the same DNA in this case that I saw in the Adirondack, that I saw in my review of the Rothy case. And for those of you who don't know what Adirondack or Rothy is, I will provide you links to that information again. Or no, let me do this way, right? Because you and I are going to have a reciprocal relationship, right? I'll do the scouting and research and bring you information here. You take the information that I share and you go and do your own independent research so that you can study yourself approved. So I'm going to point you back to the articles that I've already written on the Adirondack and the Rothy case and its impact on our national security. But suffice to say, for this particular discussion, the response that the government put up to the motion that the plaintiffs in the Minority Business Development Agency's lawsuit is weak, in my opinion, at best. And at the center, should I say, and I'm just trying to find the words here because I'm aghast that professional lawyers put up such a weak defense in a circumstance where the measure is but for race. This is one of the first tests of the new discrimination measure that Byron Allen's lawsuit against Comcast caused to weigh on the discrimination charge. And for those of you who are not familiar with the but-for scenario, I'll explain it this way. Prior to the Supreme Court decision on the Byron Allen case, or in the Byron Allen case, the measure to prove discrimination in a court of law was likely to include race. As a result of the Byron Allen lawsuit, the new measure now is but for race. And when you read the plaintiff's motion in the MBDA lawsuit, you clearly see that their argument is that but for our race, we were discriminated against. But for our race, the Minority Business Development Agency would have allowed us access to the services. And no matter how frivolous this law case is, in my humble opinion, its impact is going to be epic. It's going to be reverberating, just like the impact that we saw in the Rothy and Adirondack case, because, again, I've already told you, you can review some of my previous videos, that back in the day, black and brown people who wore my social uniform, had the ability to self-certify under a small disadvantaged business contracting program. And contracting officers had the discretion to set requirements aside for small disadvantaged businesses. And I'm just opposing small disadvantaged businesses from 8As because that's a different animal that I will cover in a different subject. As a result of Rothy, which basically was a case that was it was challenged in DOD. It was challenged under the Department of Defense. What resulted was a dismantling of the entire small disadvantaged business contracting program. It first went from you had to have the SBA certify you as a small disadvantaged business to you could self-certify, and now it's not even a imagination in the minds of contracting officers in a season, right, where the president is trying to increase the spending to small disadvantaged businesses to 15%. Again, that's another topic for another day. For this conversation, I am literally pointing your attention to the update that we got out of the Rothy lawsuit. And that update provides the government's response to the plaintiff's motion. And I'm concerned about the government's response because I'll never forget what my good friend and mentor told me about the Rothy case when he said to me, and I'm quoting, he said, "Walter, the reason that Rothy was lost was simply because the government did not provide a vigorous defense of the facts." I see that same kind of scenario underway here. And at the end of the day, if it is going to impact people who wear my social uniform, I'm not looking at the one finger that I would be pointing at the government for not doing the right thing, if you will. I'm looking at these three fingers that are pointing back at me, these three fingers that are pointing back at us as a community. And I'm asking the questions, what kinds of things can we do, right? What kinds of things can we do to change the game? And for me, this is a big deal because I've got a dog in this fight. I was distracted, as I said, during the Rothy case. In this instance, I'm not distracted. I'm hyper-focused. I'm currently connected to the Federal Procurement Center as their veteran procurement liaison, and that's the Federal Procurement Center under the Minority Business Development Agency, because I was happily there on, I think it's this way, I was happily there when history was made. I was happily there when Congress went back into session and passed that bill that made the Minority Business Development Agency a permanent agency for the first time in over 50 years of operating under executive order. I was excited as we briefed the then acting director about all of the things that we were going to do to make sure that there was an equitable playing field in contracting, and we could take a portion of the federal government's $1.2 trillion and make sure that it was available, make sure that it was awarded to people who wore my social uniform. So you can imagine how dismayed I was when the Will lawsuit came up, and I quietly and patiently waited for the government to deliver their response. I even offered my services in the form of litigation support to help them figure this one out. Didn't get that call, but here I am now telling you in no uncertain terms that we need to get ready for whatever's necessary, to include not letting the necessary occur. I'm quoting the philosopher Jay-Z on that one. And what I mean by that is there are other solutions. We've got other tools in our toolkit than just the Minority Business Development Agency, right? We have other pathways to economic success. And I'm unpacking those pathways, and I'm sharing those with him who has ears to hear and him who has eyes to see in very private lunch and learn sessions that I am delivering that you have an opportunity to participate in. How do you participate in it? Surf out to the ability2.biz website and follow the instructions that you see on the screen, right? And the reason that this information is going to be disseminated in a private environment as opposed to this public venue is because I don't want to in any way, shape, or form inform right, our competitors, right, inform the plaintiffs in this case to give them more ammunition. But more importantly, I want you, right? I want you, the individual that's going to be affected by the disappearance of the Minority Business Development Agency. I mean, let's think about that for a second, right? The Minority Business Development Agency is also connected to the National Minority Supplier Development Council, which means that the MBDA centers that are in your community are funded by the same budget, the same appropriation that's being attacked in this situation. So it's not just the disappearance of the amorphous Minority Business Development Agency, but it's the disappearance of that support resource that's in your community that you need to be preparing for. Because what are you going to do when that goes away? Right? Who are you going to turn to for some guidance on issues when there is a new moratorium? There is a additional barrier placed between you and the federal contracting opportunities. Well, fortunately, there's a solution, right? Fortunately, there is a pivot that we can make as a collective, but it's got to be made as a collective, right? This is not one of those go fast by yourself, Walter. You figured it out and go get rich, right? This is a situation where we as a tribe, we as a community have to make this pivot together. And ergo, we're going to be delivering information during the lunch and learns that I am delivering. The next one is going to be on June 1st, as you see on the screen, that is going to provide you access to the private knowledge that I enjoy on these matters. Not going to weigh you down on that one. I'm not going to sell you on attending, right? Because this is not a sales effort, right? What I'm going through the process of doing is ushering in a movement, a required movement for people who wear my social uniform during this season. And it's required because you cannot expect us to solve the problems that were created by our oppressors' systems, utilizing our oppressors' strategies. And as a result of that, someone who's got access to that information has got to take the benevolent position of making sure that him and her who has an interest, him and her who has a desire to create generational wealth has access to that. They have that to add to their tool belt that they're utilizing to cultivate generational wealth for their family. And that's what we're going to be doing at the Lunch and Learns. Again, simply surf out to the ability2.biz website. These events are free. They won't cost you anything except the payment of your attention. Oh, what else did I wanted to deal with today? I mean, this is a big deal for me, right? This is a very, very big deal for me because, as I said, my dog in this fight has everything to do with the fact that, I was there when history was made, and to have history snatched right out of the jaws of success, right? Or should I say, to have success snatched right out of the jaws of history would be a challenge for me in this circumstance. So I have made it my commitment to bring my guns, my lawyers, my extra ammunition to this particular fight and make sure that him and her who wear my social uniform have the maximum practicable opportunity to participate in the contracts that are let by this federal government, which I think I've already told you represent a little bit more than $1.2 trillion. And the last thing I'm going to share with you before I transition, because I think this is probably the most critical point of information I wanted to share during this entire telecast, during this entire podcast, and that is the fact that we have to be timely in our response. We have to react to these opportunities while the prevailing rule of law exists. And as we're going to see in this case with the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, right, their attack on the MBDA and therefore everything minority business, we're going to see a change during your lifetime, during your visible experience in the rule of law. that change in the rule of law is going to retard your ability. It's going to take away some authorities that you now enjoy in the federal contracting arena. Before they take away all of the others, and there is nothing off the table now, right? We're going through a debt ceiling increase negotiation, right? Spending reduction. Nothing's off the table right now. It is imperative. It is incumbent upon you to make sure that you have studied yourself approved, gone in, captured as much generational wealth as you can while that prevailing rule of law exists, and put it aside so that up to 5 generations of your family don't have to worry about the shenanigans that will ensue moving forward. Well, folks, that's about all I have for this session of my Patriot Report. 1, we've got an update to the Will lawsuit. The government has filed their response, and guys and girls, it just doesn't look good from where I'm sitting. I'm not a lawyer. I could be wrong. So if you're a legal out there, you show me how the response that the government has delivered overcomes, right, the but-for requirement in this law. I mean, it's a violation of the 4th Amendment, right? Equal protection. You explain to me how this argument this argument on procedural terms is going to overcome the very real fact that but for their race, those people were discriminated against. And I will share the responses that I get from that question, to that question from the Legal Eagles during our next telecast. But for now, I'm going to again invite you to join me on June 1st when we are going to deliver that private lunch and learn. And at that lunch and learn, I'm going to unpack not just the tools that you can use to insulate and defend yourself against this pending threat, but I'm going to point you to a new market opportunity that's resulting from a alliance that I've created with our HBCU community. All that will be disseminated at our lunch and learn. That's all I've got for this quick hitter quitter. Until next time, this is Walter Cotton saying, I'm out.
I got something to say and I can keep it in. This could be the last, cause it's okay, we never speak again. Y'all know I don't cry, but sometimes I can feel them creeping in. I had my time of war, I think it's time I find my peace within. I got something to say and I can keep it in. This could be the last, cause it's okay, we never speak again. Y'all know I don't cry, but sometimes I can feel them creeping in. I had my time of war, I think it's time I find my peace within. If they ain't hit my line way back when my pockets was thin, now my clock full of dollars, it's time I got to spend. Time to get off these blocks, that's why I'm going in. I was a dope boy, I'll be a better man. So right now I gotta do what I gotta do for sin. I found out my problem and finally kicked it in the end. I don't know how many times I done shied away from wins, but mama, I promise I never hide my face again. I'm always too guilty to play the victim. You never call, you never truly know a conviction. It's some beautiful souls living some of these women. Sometimes I wish it was more of me I could give them. Pray the Lord I'm forgiven for my dealings if I'm living wrong. Guess I at least can paint the ceilings if I'm a given one. Hard to develop new feelings when feeling numb. I realize I feel like I need them all cause I'm the one.